us all. We're all muted. There we go. We're gonna. I forget that OBS doesn't switch the audio mixer when you switch scenes. It only switches what's showing. It doesn't actually switch the audio stuff over. So if I turn it off on this one, you have to turn it back on all of them, and it gets me every time, every single time. But we're here. Like I said, hopefully we got the timing correct on it. Muted. There we go. We're gonna. And who do we have? I forget that OBS doesn't switch.
Dave?
Hello. I'm Dave. Baptism reason. Sorry, I was just checking the stream and I realized, oh yeah, we're streaming.
Yes, we're here.
Yeah. I write and podcast with Joe for Answers and Reasons. I study philosophy and have studied psychology, and I came on because I thought this would be good for a laugh.
You know this is going to be a good one, right? When we start off with something like that.
And I just want to say thank you to Steve for setting it up as well.
Yeah, Steve pointed you guys in my direction, and he pointed me in your guys' direction, and it looks like this is going to be a little bit of a romp around.
Aye, it's all done in good humor.
Yes. Yeah, this is all for funsies. We're not trying to like wreck anybody's day or destroy anybody's life work or anything like that. That would be a little bit intense, I think, especially for my channel.
And I'm Joe, or Davidian, on Answers in Reason. So I blog, podcast, manage the site, and do the production on things. I'm an enthusiast of philosophy and have been learning a lot, especially over the last year. A lot of it is with Dave's help. He's been putting me into loads of different articles and, looking at all different aspects of various topics. And some of the things that I found really easy were things like propositional logic as well, because I'm a programmer by trade. And that sort of thing just really made a lot of sense to me, as along with all the stuff like beliefs and knowledge. Basically, epistemology I find really interesting.
Is that a Deadpool unicorn shirt?
It is.
Yes. Yes. So we've got Joe and Dave with us here today, specifically from Answers in Reason. So we're going to take a look at Aron's blog, and hopefully he won't get mad at us. But whatever.
Everybody's always mad at me all the time anyway.
Yeah, there we go. So let's get the screen share going, and I'll show you guys what we got. I hope you brought your alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, I may have to refill. I've only got one glass.
Oh, you're gonna need a refill. So first thing I wanted to show, it says, I was looking for this before, and I was unable to find it, and I was able to find it today. And this is just an old painting I did back, because I told chat I would show it to them. This is a painting I did of Aron, like, I don't even know, X number of years ago. And so this was whoops, that's not what I want to do. Whoop. So this was the process of it. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was when he was speaking in Washington. Oh, it's not going to show me. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's good.
So I thought that was a fun little thing to show the chat, because they were asking about it, but that was some time ago. And here's the blog. So I'm pretty sure that was when he was speaking at one of the Reason rallies or something like that. Whenever it decides to load back up again. Thanks, Google.
This is the version on Patheos rather than the League of Reason. I did notice that he posted the same article in two places. I don't know if this one's any different to the one that I actually read.
Oh, well, maybe we'll find something different in here. That'd be interesting. I didn't notice he had put it in two different places.
Yeah, it was on League of Reason, and it was just called What is Atheism?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this one is definitely a little bit... Interestingly enough, it's under the non-religious tag. For anybody who doesn't know, Patheos was bought out by a Christian company.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like a good number of years ago. And this hurt my feelings Reason advocates. If you can't show it, you don't know it. Oh, that's why it took so long. It needed to load that fantastic looking sandwich.
Which fits so well in with the rest of it.
Alright, so let's take a look and see what we've got. If you don't believe...
do you know what?
Yeah, go.
No, it is. It's missing the preamble to his one. So this comes down further. On the actual one on the League of Reason, he started going on and talking about how he was born in Texas, or how he lives in Texas, and etc. etc. But it does have this bit further on. So yeah, this must be a skinned down version of his article.
Gotcha. Is it missing anything that's like going to change what he's saying?
No, not really.
I don't think so. No, I mean, yeah, I just need to go through my notes and find where it starts there. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, him talking about the list of atheist organizations, etc. Yeah, I'm there.
Gotcha. Oh, wait, hold on. I may need to move us over. Discord, why do you do things like this? There we go. I hate when it does that. When it switches around, it gets confused in OBS sometimes. There we go. If you don't believe in any god, you're atheist. August 15th, 2020 by Aron Ra. I'm really hoping these comments are good. The 14 of them. I hate that I have to explain this yet again. Probably because people think you're joking. Hopefully this one last time I will... Wow! Hopefully this one last time will be all I ever need to say about it from now on.
No, because we're going to make him say it again and again and again.
I feel like people are just starting to troll his YouTube videos or the titles that he puts on Twitter, because he'll say that, oh, we're having a conversation about this, and then somebody will ask him, but is that thing an atheist? And I mean, it is harmless, but it's kind of funny. The list of atheist organizations includes the Center for Inquiry, the American Human Association, the Freedom from Religious Foundation, Foundations Beyond Belief, and Secular Student Alliance, among many others. Not all of them have atheist in their name, because if you use that word, then you have to explain what you mean by that. Why? It should have a pretty common and understood meaning, Aron. Why does it not have that?
Is it because the term's polysemous? Oh, people use it in different ways?
And you'll have to argue with those who insist that it doesn't or can't really mean what we all mean when we identify as such. Wait, what?
Well, I mean, I do get a lot of people arguing with me when I say I believe God does not exist and that I'm not an atheist, and that's not what atheism is, so...
Yeah,
well,
people do like to be prescriptive.
I know you do get the people like Saitan who will say that, oh, well, you actually do know God exists, and so you're not... right? Like, you get that. He's not saying you're not an atheist, or he's just saying that you're denying God because you really do know that God exists, for whatever reason.
Yeah, but you also get a lot of laxtheists who will argue that you're using the term wrong, like Aron Ra, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't meet a lot of atheists like me who argue that they can't use the term in the way they use it.
Well, it seems bizarre to say what we all mean when we identify as such.
I mean, I don't mean the same thing.
Right, clearly not. When I say that I'm an atheist, I don't mean what Aron means. Right,
and a lot of other laxtheists don't mean what Aron means.
Yeah, that's true.
If you Google atheism, you will see that it is disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. I want to point out real quick, the word "or" is in there.
Yep.
I just wanted to specify that.
Yeah, that's showing that there's at least an understanding between disbelief and lack of belief. They're not the same word. They might be used in a synonymous way sometimes, but they are not the same thing. So there's an understanding there that those two things have a different meaning. Also, I mean, he's just using a Google dictionary. He's getting the first one that he picks off. Dictionaries descriptive. They describe how the terms are used in the environment. So the Google dictionary is going to do how it's usually used on the internet. But if you actually have a look at other dictionaries like the Oxford or Cambridge dictionaries, they still use the normative definition that the belief gods do not exist.
As you scroll down here too, he says, this is the common usage. Notice that Google also defines disbelief as inability or refusal to accept that something is true or real. Does that...
I mean, in some ways it sort of indicates you're saying God is not real.
Yeah. So if it's not real, then... what does that mean? It doesn't exist in reality, would we say? There is no objective reality of God or
inability or refusal to accept. So denying something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So the things that he's citing are not really going towards his point that we know he's getting at.
Yeah.
No.
There's a
There
lot
does
of that.
seem, yeah, there does seem to be a bit of a bias in the way he's interpreting things.
Not necessarily belief, it is false. What? Hold on. Okay, the definition, I agree that the definition that he quotes here does not use the word false. But if I refuse to accept something is true, what does that mean?
Oh, usually you'd expect you'd be thinking it was false. And thinking something's false is the same as saying, well, I'm accepting this as false. I believe it's false.
Okay. The issue here is that some philosophers insist that disbelief cannot simply mean that one is unconvinced that the claim is true. They argue that it must also be a conviction that the claim is not true. Similarly, some philosophers say that atheism cannot merely be the absence of belief that any gods exist, but that it can only be the presence of belief that no gods exist.
I mean, it is kind of argued that way in philosophy. It's argued in terms of the content of the belief, but most won't say, no, you're not allowed to use it in other ways because they know how language works.
Yeah. At the end of the day, as we said, it's dictionaries and language is descriptive. It's how people are using the terms. So there's technically no wrong definition of anything. Using atheism or disbelief to mean cheese sandwiches. And if it got enough following, that would be, a valid definition. And it might even hit a dictionary in a particular environment. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the most logical definition, though.
Right. Wikipedia, we're using wiki magic.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of them will say Wikipedia isn't a reliable source, but then go straight to it to make their own arguments.
Well, you'll also notice that a lot of them will, somebody like a theist might bring forth the malleable definition of theory, and they'll be like, no, that's not valid. We're talking about how it's used in science.
Oh, a contextually correct definition, you mean? Oh!
I'm sorry, what was that? Where are we? Wikipedia explains, quote, atheism is, in the broadest sense, an absence of belief in the existence of deities. Less broadly, atheism is a rejection of the belief that any deities exist. In an even narrower sense, atheism is specifically the position that there are no deities. Atheism is contrasted with theism, which in its most general form is the belief that at least one deity exists.
I'm pretty sure that just...
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that just goes against what Aron argued, that it's only a lack of belief.
Yeah.
It does.
It's described a number of different ways that it's actually been defined. And then he goes on to explain his particular view on it, and it's just... He's going in with a single-minded view, that there's a certain part of this paragraph that backs me up, so that's the only bit that's right because it confirms my bias.
I mean, this is kind of discussed in the book Atheism, A Guide for the Perplexed, which starts out with a very similar paragraph talking about how atheism in the broadest sense is just a lack of belief. But it's not actually useful for debating the question of whether or not God exists.
I do think there is an argument to be made that in some cases it's more useful to use a term one way versus another. So in their show or in their discussions, or if you're having a one-on-one with someone and your goal is to try to get them to question what their system is, like what are they thinking and what they want and are saying, versus if you're trying to explain to somebody whether or not, like if you're trying to get into more broad or more complex specifications when it comes to what categories and like within philosophy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's definite utility, and I think to any definition, and I think if you are on the net, there is utility to using the atheist definition because that is what most people understand it to be. But I suppose you find out how someone is using the terminology, and then you can have a discussion about that if you want, or just go, right, for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to use your definition, and then maybe another time we can just have the same discussion but use mine.
I think you would end up running into, like, the thing is we can't get to that discussion. If somebody's going to quote an article, it's 3 definitions as it gets more specific, and then they say that you can only use, or you don't even acknowledge that these other things are reasonable to say, we can't get that far in the conversation.
No, we can't. And if the question is only about whether you believe or not, it never actually gets to the question of whether there is an actual God, and that never actually kind of gets to the discussion of what the theist actually believes.
Right. Or the atheist in that case.
Or the atheist, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. If theism is the belief that at least one deity exists, atheism is not a belief that any deity exists. So he's saying it's the belief that no gods exist?
Yeah, that doesn't parse very well, that sentence.
Is he trolling us?
He could be. I mean, according to that, what was his name? Udi Rock or whatever his name was? According to him, Aron is just trolling us.
I mean, I don't know why that would benefit Aron, but hey, okay.
Especially as he's always criticizing people for dividing the community.
It would be really funny if this whole thing was a troll. It would be really funny, because he's got me. All right, you got me, dude.
Yeah, do you know what? And if he suddenly turns around and is like, right, I just wanted to see who would believe me without question, and I'm quite disappointed in the number of you atheists out there that actually believed all that crap about rocks are atheists and all that sort of stuff. I actually go with the normative definition. Atheism should be understood as the belief gods do not exist, and all of a sudden you have the atheist community implode.
That would actually, that would be an interesting thought experiment.
I would actually hold them up. Yeah, I'd hold them up as King Atheist.
Yeah, the new Pope of Atheism would, The contrast is between believers and unbelievers, not between believers believing that the claim is true versus believers believing that the claim is false. But that goes against what he just said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I needed my hand held through this, because I'll throw myself down the stairs.
I mean, there still is the contrast between people that believe it's true and people like me that believe it's false.
Yeah. and there's the fence sitters and other ontological positions as well.
Yeah.
Rocks.
And rocks. I was arguing with one earlier, and it wouldn't give me anything I needed.
Damn it. We need to do an experiment. At least, I mean, I could go with this plant right here. At least the plant is, like, constituted by being an organic living thing. Did you know that this is a pine tree?
I mean, it contains the property of a lack of belief, so it would be like asking a rock.
Yeah.
At least plants are able to communicate with other plants, kind of.
I'm not sure we'd actually say they have mental states, though, would we?
I don't think so. They do go through, like, part where sometimes they're, like, clearly in distress. Like, you could have a stressed out plant that because it's not getting enough of one thing or another, it's described as stress, but that's just a trying to...
Isn't it?
Yeah.
There's also some plants actually start to slowly retract if they feel like they're being eaten. You know, again, that's just pure reaction. I don't think that's anything conscious
Right. I don't think the
going on in this process.
Yeah, I don't think the plant can decide later to not be stressed out. Yeah, I don't think the plant's going to be doing yoga anytime soon.
I don't think we are either, to be fair.
So, I'm told... I still want to know who some philosophers are. Because he says some philosopher, but he didn't specify which philosophers he was referring to. And then also has yet to explain which philosophers agree with him.
Yeah, also, who's told him
that later.
These reasons about other philosophers, you know?
Right.
It's very vague with... well, everything on this. Oh yeah, I'm going to be vague about the things that, you know, don't agree with me, but I'll be really specific about the things that I think do.
I'm told there are reasons why some philosophers insist on this unnecessarily restrictive and counterproductive definition, which only serves to diminish atheists individually and collectively, but thus far the only explanation these antagonists have given for why they insist on imposing this prescriptive restriction is that I can't get through the sentence, is that I must be stupid and dishonest, as if everyone who shares my opinion is dishonest too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've read a lot of journal articles on atheism and why it should be used in sense of the proposition, but I've never seen Aron Ra's name mentioned.
The other side of it as well is, you know, his being prescriptive with his definition, demanding that everyone uses his particular definition of atheism. You know, we're all saying he shouldn't be prescriptive. We accept that there are other definitions of atheism. We prefer the normative definition because it provides an epistemological answer to the proposition God exists, and it allows us to easily infer what people do and don't believe about that proposition with all the different positions. But he's complaining that that's diminishing individuality because he wants people to conform to his definition. So who is it actually that is trying to diminish individuality here?
Well, you can tell which one of us came prepared for this.
Yeah, definitely not me.
I'm kind of confused by the unnecessarily restrictive, counterproductive definition. Okay, how? First off, you need to acknowledge that there are other definitions that people can use and acknowledge that it's okay for them to use them, which he's implying that it isn't. Then you need to explain how it's restrictive and counterproductive, which means you have to get the definition and the argument correct in the first place. Then, the only the antagonists?
Yeah, I mean... Huh?
I didn't realize that philosophical papers we're so like full of bullies.
Yeah, all the papers I write and read, they're all just about making people angry, not about getting to truth or anything like that, you know. It's
All
about
of
bullying
philosophy
people.
is only about bullying people into using philosophical terms. They're definitely not about the philosophy themselves.
I can vouch for that.
How would that apply to any paper written about biology using the word theory?
Yeah. Well, it's just an idea, you know, so, you know, it doesn't really matter. You're just making ideas up about how these various processes work. It doesn't actually happen. Oxygen isn't real. Air doesn't really exist. We don't really breathe.
You can't see it.
Like, yeah, so therefore, you can't see your brain, therefore you don't have one.
Right. I just, if you were to like move this argument into the field of biology, you would run into the problem of saying that anybody writing about biology using the term theory is, by using the term that way, is suggesting that they're using a restrictive, counterproductive definition that's forcing other people to only use theory in that way, when we know for a fact, colloquially, it is normally, in normative usages, it's people talking about, oh yeah, I had this idea, and that's like a fine way to use the term, just not when you're referring to biology, and not when you're referring to music, which is an entire other field of study, which does not use the term the same way as biology does.
You're definitely right there. And when you're having a discussion about things like beliefs and knowledge, whether you realize it or not, you are having a philosophical discussion. You may not be a philosopher yourself, but the discussion is philosophical in nature. Right. Therefore, it would be sensible, perhaps, to use the contextually correct or normative word for that particular field. Just like we might say, you know, evolution should not be defined as a changing kind. And when you're doing anything scientific, you shouldn't define theory as just an idea, because there is a contextually correct definition. The reason he actually is saying it's restrictive and counterproductive is because he and some of the other sites that he mentioned earlier on, and I think he mentions later, care about numbers. Especially, there's a political game, there's ideology there, so it's counterproductive to his purpose. He wants numbers, he wants a lot of atheists behind him. But the other side of it is his prescriptivism is pushing other non-theists who don't identify the way he does, and even atheists that might actually use that, away from him. He's the one actually being counterproductive with his prescriptivism.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He seems like, okay, I'm gonna goof. This is a goof. I'm mostly just teasing when I'm saying this. Keyword mostly. It sounds like the way this is written is that he feels like he's being, like his ideology and what he thinks is being attacked by just regular philosophical papers.
That's the sort of thing I feel as well. He has this need to be identified as atheist at all points in all times, and when he reads these, he doesn't fit into that category, but he wants to be atheist, so needs to be called it in every sense, in every possible world, sort of thing.
But he also doesn't seems to have trouble with saying that he's atheist, but also needs to justify his position. Go ahead, sorry.
No, he actually said that he actually, for himself, believes gods do not exist. Nowadays, he was a lack-theist himself, as in he did go by the lack belief, but he's actually done enough research into the matter that he now believes gods do not exist, but he still believes the lack-theist definition is also atheist. He splits it between the whole weak and strong atheist type thing.
But then what's the point of the blog then? Is it just to be mad at Steve?
People do like being mad at him. It's quite funny sometimes.
That's kind of petty, don't you think?
Well, again, it's back to his ideology. He wants numbers, so if he can get everyone that lacks belief, or he can prove that atheism's the default position, he can basically have a stronger hold on what he perceives the reality to be, and more numbers and more voting power, more ability to get things like creationism out of schools, which I think is, you know, a good thing to do. But I think you'll find the average non-theist would also not want creationism in schools. So I think that he should actually just accept that there are non-theists that don't identify as atheists. So if he wants to rally, he should say all non-theists, or atheists and other non-theists and non-religious and whatever, rather than no, you all must be atheist.
Well, and it's only like one extra step if you're trying to go for the numbers. You say, here's all the people who identified as atheist, here's all the people who identified as non-theist, and you say, if you put them together, who all want this thing taught in schools, because there's also probably a good percentage of theists who agree with that also, that you would just be like, okay, well, for the purposes of what we're talking about, these two numbers actually go together for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I went to quite Christian schools, and we did, you know, the science was proper science. There was evolution. It wasn't creationism or anything like that. But I still went to a very religious school, said the Lord's Prayer every single day. You know, it's not just religion. It's pretty much just creationism that refuses things like evolution and wants their hypotheses taught as fact.
Well, if we go back to something that we said earlier about how all three groups, the agnostics, the theists, and the laxtheists, were all saying to Aron it's a bad argument, it looks stronger when there's more groups of people saying, no, don't do this thing. So by limiting it to just one category of atheist, it doesn't look as strong as saying, well, no, look at all these categories of people that don't want it taught in school.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really good point, actually.
I also think there's something to be said for by saying that it's that this definition is restrictive. It's not. It's just specific. There's a difference between being specific and being clear and being restrictive. We're not saying that people have to identify as this. We're saying that this is a proper, specific description to be more clear about what their stance is. That doesn't mean that those other positions suddenly don't exist.
No, exactly. And in philosophy, you want sort of precise language. You want language where when you use a word, people know exactly what you're talking about, so that you don't have to keep remaking the same argument, the same definition, and all that kind of thing. And if he's finding it restrictive, is that because he kind of wants to be identified in this way, and this definition is not allowing him to identify in that way? I mean, it just seems like a really weird thing to say, that a definition is restrictive.
It's restrictive to his personal identity, is what you're saying, or his personal philosophy.
Yeah, that's it. But it just seems like such a weird thing to say, that this word isn't allowing me to identify in this way. And like you said, it doesn't stop the other definitions existing. Right.
Yeah. Well, let's move on a little bit. Each of the organizations, we can talk about that probably for 2 hours alone.
Oh, yeah.
Each of the organizations who identify as atheist agree with me on this.
Okay, ad populum fallacy?
Yeah, okay. For example, the National 501c3 Organization of American Atheists says, atheism is one thing, a lack of belief in gods. He literally just showed 3 examples above this that says that that's wrong.
Yeah, not to mention, I think, isn't he the regional director, or used to be the regional director of American Atheists?
I don't remember if that's the one or if it was the ACA. I don't remember which he did. He might have been both, for all I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically going, look at my site. It's definitely right. There's no other references to any other material. It's just this definition that it gives on my site, therefore it's right.
Oh, of course. Atheism is not this is like going to FE Core's website and they say, look, the earth is flat, and then fucking, I don't know, Jaronism shows up and is like, hey guys, the earth is flat. Look at this. Look at all these websites that me and my buddies made that all say that that the earth is flat.
Yeah, basically, that's a good way to put it.
Atheism is one thing, a lack of belief in gods. Atheism is not an affirmative belief that there is no gods, nor does it answer any other question about what a person believes. Actually, that completely brings up one of the contentions people have with this definition, is that it doesn't tell me what you think.
Yep.
So
That's why it's
doesn't
not used
matter.
in philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad that Aron's doing our work for us. It is simply a rejection of the assertion that there are gods. Atheism is too often defined incorrectly as a belief system.
No, holding a belief does not make something a belief system. You know, if I go out on the street and I decide to cross a bridge, and I believe that bridge is going to hold my weight, that doesn't mean I have an entire belief system about bridges. It just means that I believe this bridge is going to hold my weight. And why? Well, there's a bit of inductive reasoning. There's knowledge of the construction of bridges. There's the fact that I can see things a lot heavier going over the bridge than me. I mean, that's plenty rational belief. That doesn't mean I'm absolutely certain. I mean, I could be really unlucky and walk over it and it does collapse. I mean, that's the other thing as well. No matter what you believe, you're not saying anything about the strength of your belief. You could be mostly sure. You could be kind of sure. It's just the way you're leading. It's what you think is most true, most probable.
I've never actually heard anybody argue that atheism is a belief system, though.
Yes, but I've heard people argue that it's not when you say that atheism is normatively described as the belief gods do not exist. And they go, no, atheism's not a belief system. And you're like, I didn't say it was. I said it was a belief. And that's not how everyone uses it either. And you're free to use it how you like. But this is the normative definition within philosophy, and it's the one I ascribe to. No, it's not a belief system. Okay. You focus on that bit.
I mean, I know there are people who will, like, you get some silly arguments, especially on the internet. You get some, like, silly, weird disagreements that are essentially just to do with verbiage and, like, some of the issues with different regions and different countries and the way they type and, like, what words mean depending on what. Like, this isn't exclusive to just talking about atheism. You can pick a word and it gets used differently in this country versus on TV versus in, like, on your day-to-day versus, like, whatever. If I say goblin, do you think of this kind of a goblin? Or do you think of, like, the classic D&D goblin? Did you play a video game that has goblins that have different rules? Goblin is a very, very general term, but if I say specifically this goblin from this TV or this YouTube series that they designed this particular goblin, is it wrong to say that there are different kinds of goblins, or am I going to get in trouble for using the word kind?
Well, no, to be honest, that's actually one of the arguments that Wittgenstein kind of makes, that when we talk about a word, we're actually just sort of using an approximation unless we're specific. So if I say red, it's not necessarily that I might be speaking about a different shade of red than you're thinking of.
Or you might be talking about have the past tense of have been reading something.
Yeah, exactly. It's how it's used in the context, and it's all approximations. And like you said, different cultures, a different word. In Britain, we use words very differently to some North Americans.
Right. There's a couple particular swear words that may make a big splash in certain countries and nobody cares in other countries.
Exactly.
There are some that are slurs. Straight up slurs in America, not slurs in other countries.
Exactly.
No.
The British word for cigarette is one that springs to mind.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Also, when I lived in America, I referred to my friend as a total geezer, and he got really offended because the only use of geezer out there, at least at the time, we're going back 20 odd years ago, was an old guy, an old fuddy-duddy sort of guy. And I was like, no. I mean, you could have taken, like, the way I was saying it to go, oh, maybe he's not meaning it that way. I was like, man, he's a total geezer sort of thing, you know? But he took offense to it all the same because that is not how it's used out there. And it took quite a bit of explanation to say, well, actually, that's not what I mean.
That's what Americans get for breaking away from us.
Though they did take the U out of colour, and I like that.
I don't.
Oh, that was one of the funny things that I saw a tweet or I don't remember, an Instagram post, I don't remember, about, maybe it was Tumblr, about how America had changed the word color and favorite and flavor, and then England essentially asked America, what are you doing? Why are you changing this? And they were like, we're getting rid of you.
I like that.
That's good. That's really good. Though what I do not understand is why you miss off the H in the word herbs. Herbs.
Yeah, I don't know. In Canada, we say herb. They're like that.
Oh,
We
do
say
you?
that. Yeah, in Canada, and it's the same with the U. The U, the Canadian spelling of flavor and favorite and color all has the U.
Yeah, it was like that while I lived there.
Yep, just the United States of Middle North America. So, atheism is not necessarily a disbelief in. He added necessarily.
Yeah, it sort of kind of goes against the atheism is one thing.
Yeah.
Atheism is not necessarily a disbelief in gods or a denial of gods. It is a lack of belief in gods.
See, one thing would
Why
fix
would he
that
put
if they
that
just
in?
if they just put also in the middle of a couple of those words. That would
Right.
actually fix that paragraph.
Yeah, it'd be totally fine. Similarly, Atheist Alliance International agrees, quote, theism is the belief in a god or gods. The prefix a means without or lack of. Therefore, atheism means without a belief in a god or gods, or the lack of belief in a god or gods. I had people in my chat last week when we were talking about this saying that Aron is just lacking a Ron. I'm not gonna lie, I got a kick out of that one. We also got a super chat from Helios for 5 that says, holy hells and high heaven, I need stronger coffee for this. Add some Baileys.
Though you could say A can also be used as not instead of without, so he's also not Ron.
Oh. So then what is he, though?
He's a rock.
He's not Ron. Okay. So what's your name? It's not Ron. All right. Thanks. Oh god. Okay, we've often heard, and this is still quoting the website or whatever he used, quoting Atheist Alliance International. We often hear theists say, quote, if you don't believe in God, you must believe gods do not exist or does not exist. I agree that would be incorrect. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, in some ways, I actually kind of agree with them saying that, you know, it's not necessarily true that if you don't believe in God, you have to believe they don't exist.
Right.
Yeah, but equally, I haven't necessarily heard many theists make that claim either.
No.
I mean, I'm sure it has happened, but
Sure.
I've not had that happen. If I've never had a theist tell me that, so
I don't speak to many people, so.
But this is... I mean, I don't blame you. You're probably right. But this is simply wrong. Lacking a belief in a god does not entail believing that no gods exist. Okay.
yeah, that's fair.
A person could reasonably say she doesn't know if any gods exist, and there are none that she currently believes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yep.
It's not necessary for an atheist to claim that no gods exist. Nevertheless, some do.
Yeah.
And this
Yep.
is where
I do like the way that they start out strong and contradict themselves in the second paragraph often.
the
In the
second half of
the
it.
paragraph.
Yeah, like they had us in the first half, man. Why are you putting the word atheist in here? This is the thing that makes it incorrect. It's using the word atheist. You could just say it's not necessary for a person to claim that no gods exist. Nevertheless, some do. Those are atheists.
Yep, that would actually read much better and be correct.
Hey! People often call this position hard atheism. People? What? You?
Well, flu kind of refers to it in that way, sort
Yes.
of.
But the thing was
Positive
is
and
that
negative atheism.
wasn't Flu making an argument for the definition change?
Yep.
Yes, and it
So
was
it
pretty much
wasn't-
rejected. This is how it's currently defined. I don't think it should be that way. Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, I see your paper. That's nice. So anyway,
It was kind of like that, to be honest.
oh, poor guy. Kind of feel bad. Hard atheism is atheism with additional conviction. What? Then what is an agnostic? This is one of the things I don't understand. If you're going to make atheism such a broad thing, what's an agnostic then? What is the point of calling anybody an agnostic, a period?
Didn't you know agnostic only refers to knowledge? It's a modifier, it's not a position on its own.
Oh, okay. So does that mean that Aron is an agnostic?
Atheist.
But and an atheist at the
He's
same
both,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't know if he's an atheist.
He's an atheist about the belief in God, but he would have to be an agnostic on his knowledge about God.
Yeah. But if you read it in sort...
And that would mean all the theists are fucking agnostics too.
Yep. It
So
sort
the
of makes the
term
term
is
useless.
meaningless.
Yep.
Yeah,
When
I mean, even on that
everyone's
one-
a rock, nobody is. This is a good time.
There's
I'm
a
glad
lot
we're
that
doing
can
this.
be really said about that. I mean, if atheism is only a lack of belief, it's already not claiming knowledge, because unless you believe something, you can't actually have knowledge of it anyway. So it's redundant if atheism is only a lack of belief. And equally, people aren't saying I know gods don't exist if they say I believe gods don't exist. So again, they're not claiming knowledge. So there's no point in it being a modifier, even if you use that without knowledge definition. But I mean, this is one of the problems. What they're doing is that a prefix meaning without. So both with agnostic and atheism, they're using the etymology of the word to define it, but that's not necessarily the way language actually works. The original Greek atheos, which this came from, now it's debated whether the direct translation is not gods or without gods, but its use was to describe anyone that didn't believe in the gods of the state. So, the original use was used on Christians. They were some of the first atheos because they didn't believe in the Greek/Roman pantheon. So that's just it.
Would that mean that instead of using without or not, instead to say don't?
It depends how you phrase it.
In this case, so they don't believe in these gods. So if you were to say an atheist, they don't believe in the gods that are being proposed by theists?
I mean, the A is often understood as the negation, isn't it? So if you think about theism, theism is a concept in itself. So it's often defined as the belief in at least one God, but it's a concept. It's not a person. So it doesn't actually hold a belief itself. So what it's talking about is the propositional content of what people believe. A theist is one that believes in that proposition of theism, and the A is supposed to be used, at least normatively, as the negation of it. So if the propositional content of theism is God exists, the propositional content of atheism is God does not exist. That's why, existence is binary, and that's why you have the theist that believes in the proposition and the atheist that disbelieves in the theistic proposition, but they believe the atheistic one. So then you have the agnostic, which is currently used as a psychological state of suspending judgment. They don't believe either atheism or theism to be true or false. So they're suspending their judgment on it. And this is what people often talk about when they go, well, I don't believe gods exist, I just lack belief in God's existence. So it's like, right, well, if you don't believe that God exists, you lack belief in God existing, then, and you're not holding a belief gods do not exist, you're also lacking belief that gods do not exist. And this is described as being agnostic towards the proposition.
Right, okay, so what you're telling me is Aron is trying to call all agnostics atheists, but by doing so, he's calling all atheists agnostics.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless an atheist actually claims knowledge.
Unless they use the other definition, which, as we know, you're not allowed to use that definition.
Well, the thing is, even if you use the other definition and say it's a belief gods do not exist, you're still not claiming knowledge.
No.
You're
just claiming a belief.
Right. Okay. Let's keep going. We gotta truck through this.
I'm sorry, we gab a lot.
No, this is exactly what we're here for. This is a rompin' good time. Again,
nobody's
here to like rip anybody a new asshole. We're just like noticing some of the silly contradictory things that are in this thing.
Exactly.
Blah, 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 not necessary, blah, 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 hard atheism. Hard atheism is atheism, the additional conviction that there is no gods, whether inside or outside of the universe. Okay, sure. Atheist Republic also agrees. Atheism is a very broad term, even though...
Well, that's not them agreeing, is it? It's a broad term, so it's not a specific term.
Oh, well, damn. Even though it is basically interpreted as the rejection of belief. Why did he bold this? Should I assume that this is bolded in the paragraph, maybe? Because he didn't put it in brackets?
Yeah, I'm guessing he just copied and pasted.
If the in the existence of deities, the term is contrasted with theism, which suggests that there exists at least one deity. The word atheism dates back to the 5th century BCE Greek word athos, which means without gods, which we talked about. Over the years, the application of the word has been narrowed down. The definition's changed?
Yeah.
What a shocker.
Fancy that.
Significantly.
Words don't change meanings.
Thanks to the spread of free thought, skeptical inquiry, and the increase in the criticism of religion. Today, there are very few people who understand the concept completely. And that's why atheism is often misunderstood and even vilified to a large extent. Okay, I see what they're getting at, but sorry, I got a little bit of kick of that in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Different people perceive atheism differently. And hence, it is difficult to determine the total number of atheists in the world. Could one of those people be Aron, maybe? Note this last citation says the original definition of atheism was simply godless, being in some sense without gods or without theism, and that later on some philosophers imposed a newer, narrower restriction. It's not a restriction, it's specifics. Being specific is not restrictive.
No, it's not. It's not saying nobody could use this word any other way. It's just saying,
identify any other way.
Yeah, it's just saying, in these contexts, we use this more specific definition.
No one is saying that you must adopt the normative definition.
Except Aron.
But he's not suggesting the normative definition in philosophy. They're suggesting the colloquial definition in America and the internet should be the one that everybody adopts. Yeah, and that we must accept that rocks are atheists due to his definition. Well, no.
Team America.
I tweeted out when he first tweeted about this, and I started chatting with him a little bit about it. I tweeted out that I finally get to have a conversation with Aron, and it's about fucking rocks. Fuck 2020. That was my line. That was my 2020 line. Pandemic, fine. Killer bees, okay. Having to talk to Aron about rocks. Fuck my life. essentially a redefinition, which each of the organizations above uniformly reject. Okay, so he was corrected about this, because this doesn't say it was the first one, this is the earliest one we know of. I don't know of any history that says this is definitively the first something.
No, I don't.
No, I mean, it's really hard with language as it has evolved over the time, and we don't have many records from... I mean, we're lucky to have what we have with the ancient Greeks and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I in no way expect that we will actually find what the actual first use of the term is, but that is the earliest that we can sort of point to, and it did have a specific use.
Right.
And, you know, unfortunately, he appeals to etymology without understanding the use in the various contexts. Or he does understand it, but he uses it to further his agenda.
Right. Which is fine. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when he treats it this way.
Well,
Yep.
I'm wondering if we get to call Christians atheists now. Because they're without gods. They've only got one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's how it was originally used. So actually, everyone that doesn't believe in the Greek pantheon is an atheist, because we have to use the original use.
I've got to
So
get...
everyone's an atheist.
Everyone's an atheist unless you believe in the Greek pantheon specifically. So Thor, nope, you an atheist. You believe in like the Earth Mother, nope. You're pagan, nope. Unless it's the Greek gods, you're an atheist. Sorry. That'll inflate your numbers pretty goddamn quick. Do we teach the Greek pantheon in school? Yeah, they do. That's the thing that gets taught in school. Mythology is a standard in English.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed those stories, actually. They were some of the best lessons I had on religion as a kid, actually. Yeah.
They were my first introduction to gods, to be honest.
That's actually really interesting. We'll have to talk about that another time. That sounds really interesting to me, because that's quite the introduction, actually.
It was awesome. It was actually in a Canadian school.
Hey! All right, well, put a pin in that. Comment section. Timestamp this. Make a note. Coming back to this. Oh, okay. And that later on, some philosophers imposed a newer, narrower restriction. Why are all these words the words that you used?
Yeah, he definitely likes to paint it in a bad light, doesn't he? There's a certain choice to his words there. He's painting a very specific picture.
I would be really interested to see Aron write about Aron like 400 years in the future.
Yeah.
Helios for 5 says if Aron keeps shooting himself in the foot like this, he can get one of those nifty spring prosthetic feet. His real plan is finally revealed. You've literally got someone saying that some philosophers decided to make a more specific definition to... If you studied the history of this, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here and say it wasn't necessarily because of an agenda, it was because they were having the discussion more philosophers were coming in, so they were able to narrow down different kinds of things and make things more specific, and so more clarity. Whereas you're having somebody describing that as such a negative thing and as some kind of a redefinition to restrict people and impose this other definition on them, which is what Aron is doing by saying all agnostics are atheists.
Yep. That's what's always got me about this argument.
Dost thou protest too much? Okay. Essentially a redefinition. I can pick apart each sentence for like 20 minutes. Which each of the organizations above uniformly reject. No, they did not uniformly reject that. They said this is how we're using it, and they also said that it's not necessarily the case. You added the word necessarily. All of these. Listen, I'm gonna real quick, Aron. If you are watching this, I have a great editor and someone you could talk to that knows philosophy quite well, who is quite good at editing. Go and talk to Intrigued Feline. She will help you, and she is a wonderful resource if she is willing to.
Yeah, she's pretty great, actually. She's edited a couple of my articles for me. I mean, I'm dyslexic and a blogger, so it's sort of everything goes wrong when I write. I've got the right idea, but the execution is awful. So, yeah, she's done a couple of my articles and pointed out a lot of things that I've said that don't actually make sense when read back with normal people brains.
Right. All of these and each of the other activist groups promoting skeptical atheism, science education, secular politics, and humanist values identify as unbelievers as contrasted with believers. Sure. Okay. Irreligious unbelievers are also the fastest growing demographic respective to religion. Then why do you need to inflate your numbers?
Yeah.
Already outnumbering Catholics and even Protestant Christians in the United States. Thus, religious philosophers could impose the more restrictive definition as an impediment to the movement, minimizing the impact of believers by keeping us divided. That's the thing you said. He said he kept claiming other people were dividing instead of bringing people together, and he's alien. You were saying he was alienating people because they didn't want to identify the way he was telling them to identify.
Yep.
Not just that, it's not just religious philosophers that are using that definition. There's plenty of atheist philosophers.
This isn't right. Okay, so the last person I had on was theist, right? To talk about this. Steve, who talks about this, is agnostic. I'm an atheist. Where are you two at?
I'm an atheist.
Both atheists.
In the philosophical sense.
Okay. I mean, I assumed that. I figured you'd specify otherwise.
Well, you got to be clear about these things when you're having this kind of discussion.
No, totally fair. And appreciated. Because I would have assumed.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that he mentions going through this is a number of different philosophers and articles, but most of them are actually like atheist philosophers themselves that define atheism that way. So, as in the belief gods do not exist.
Right. Note that neither of these definitions includes a belief in gods. I'm sorry, neither? You're agreeing there's more than one? So the lack belief definition is still inclusive of both sets. I think we agreed with that at the beginning, did we not? We gave the super broad, then the medium, then the more specific, which is used in philosophical terms.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, no disagreement there. We're okay with this. Yet some antagonistic philosophers... I've never met an antagonistic philosopher.
Yeah, most are just too busy being in their own heads to be antagonistic.
I think he takes anything that is contradicting him as a sort of an attack. So therefore, if you don't agree with me, you're being antagonistic.
That would be literally every philosophical paper except for Flu saying, hey, maybe we should use a different definition. I'm exaggerating. I'm sure there's some other ones, yes.
Oh, yeah, there is. But, yeah, nobody's writing philosophical papers just to antagonize Aron Ra. And I mean, David Hume would have had to have a pretty good understanding of the future to know that he would be antagonizing Aron Ra 200 years later.
I want to know who this is, because he keeps saying some philosophers, they, antagonistic philosophers. Who are these people that you're talking about? Is it the same?
I don't think he actually mentions them.
Is it the same people that Kent Hovind cites when he says that evolutionists say that life came from a rock? Is it those same people?
So life came from a rock, and rocks are atheists. So therefore, all life sprung from atheism. Is that
anything that if all life came from rocks, therefore all life is a rock. Therefore everybody is a rock, and everyone's an atheist.
Impeccable logic.
I see no flaw. All right. Yeah. Yet some antagonistic philosophers seek to prohibit atheist groups from identifying by one criteria that matters to us, by insisting instead that we cannot believe, or we cannot not believe. Instead, they say we must believe in not. Okay.
Yeah, haven't you seen all those philosophers picketing outside universities telling atheists that they must identify in a certain way?
I don't. Right.
We haven't seen it, but obviously Aron has.
I don't understand the. You're talking. Okay, at this point, he's talking about their intentions. Right? He's saying that their intention, whoever this group of antagonistic philosophers are, I need to write a letter. I need to write like a forum letter that's like, hi, I'm some rando person, and somebody told me there's a bunch of antagonistic philosophers out there trying to prohibit atheist groups from identifying as rocks. Can you please tell me if you agree or disagree? Yes, no box. And then I just need to like spam it to every university that has PhD level philosophy course.
Right to gravity.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I'm sure that even if it was a philosophy 101, they would have a better understanding of the topic.
Oh god, who is this person? Who
I've
are
never
these
seen
some
anybody. Yeah, I've never
seen
seen.
to prohibit.
This sounds so conspiracy-esque. Like, it says, okay, so somebody in the chat said, I'm willing to bet that it's Steve because people like to claim he is a philosopher because he talks about philosophy. Maybe, but it says some, which implies more than one.
Not just that, I've never ever seen Steve actually say nobody could use it in a different way, just that he prefers to use it in another way.
Yeah, he prefers to not be identified in that way, so he says, hey, no, this doesn't apply to me, and it's not the way it's used in this category, and this is the way I'm using it.
Yeah, I've never seen him tell Aaron Roy that he can't use it that way.
He has told people that there are problems that come with using the definition that way. And that's the next step of the argument that we were talking about before. We were like, okay, so you can actually have this discussion about the semantics about whether or not you should or should not use a definition in this context or that context. Right? The same discussion that Aron has about the word faith and the word theory. Sure, you can have that discussion, but you have to acknowledge that there are still other ways it gets used.
Exactly.
And we can't even get that right. Because, you know, it's all about prohibiting atheist groups and dividing communities.
I might get a t-shirt printed.
Oh.
Just says, stop using atheism.
Like, can you make it say, I cannot not believe it's butter? Instead, they say we must believe in not, that we must take a position even if we don't want to. Nobody said that.
Apart from him. He is the only one doing that. You must use my definition of atheism. No, I don't want to use yours. I must use mine. That is what he is doing. And there is so much projection going on throughout this entire thing. They're all saying this. They say that. It's all on them. They. Seriously. Like, come on, dudes. A little bit of
everybody's
intellectual
out to get Aaron.
So, well, okay, so there's a conflation going on here. There's people saying, hey, maybe you should use this definition instead of that definition, or there's a problem with your definition, and here's what the problems are. To then saying that they're saying you have to adopt a different position about your belief. That's not the case at all.
It's a bit of a non sequitur.
That is, oh my god, but this made my head spin. We must take a position even if we don't want to. No. And adopt a belief that no God exists. No. No matter how senseless that sounds. I agree that sounds senseless, that nobody's saying this. Otherwise, they say, Could you make each they a link to a different person to refer to who you're talking about? Otherwise, they say we should be denied association with atheists.
What?
Who?
I mean, even if we were enforcing a definition which we're not, why does that mean that you can't associate with atheists anyway? I mean, is Steve not allowed to associate with us because he identifies as an agnostic?
All right, nobody's allowed to hang out with Steve anymore. Everybody block him. I'll put him on my block list because, as you know, if you hang out with me, you have to follow my block list. or else you're blocked, which means that I've blocked 3% of the people who follow me on Twitter. Because that's how Twitter works. You can follow people that have blocked you, right? Get me out. Get me out. You see why I didn't want to do this alone? I would be crying by this point. Otherwise, they say we should be denied association with atheists, and that some unbelievers would have to call themselves lacktheists, or some other lame label instead.
The reason I use the term lacktheist is because it's kind of specific to that particular definition. That's all.
That's what they said the definition was. He seems upset that you're using the description of the word they're using instead of the word they're using.
Yeah.
I mean, if the A does mean lack, then they are technically a lacktheist. Are they not?
I mean, he was arguing earlier that is exactly the way you should use the terms, and now he's saying that it's insulting.
Yeah, because it's a lame label. I mean,
it's
to
lame.
be honest, I think
fair.
that he shouldn't make other people be atheists that don't want to. I think that he should be respectful of how people want to identify, and if they don't want to identify as an atheist, he should use a term like non-theist. But that's because he shouldn't be prescriptive onto others about how they want to identify themselves. If there is a lacktheist that wants to be called an atheist, fine. If they're genuinely fit the ontology of someone who's agnostic or atheist or whatever, but they want to be known as an atheist, fine, I'll call you an atheist, man. I don't really care. I might have a discussion about the definitions and explain the different types, but if they want to be called an atheist, I'll be respectful of what they want to be called. So
Sure.
I don't get why he can't be respectful that other people want to be called differently themselves.
Somebody in the chat said, I think that word itself is just lame sounding. I agree. Lacktheist sounds kind of lame. So if you don't want to be called it because it sounds like, but don't say it's some kind of prohibiting atheist group by some antagonistic, just say, hey, I don't like being called this because it sounds kind of lame, and then maybe respect other people for not wanting to be called something because they don't identify as that thing based on different usages of words.
Yep.
Such antagonists cite the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, instead of Wikipedia, I guess, as one of the few sources to share their definition, even though it also says that, quote, it is important to recognize that the term atheism is polysemous.
Yeah.
Fuck's sakes.
Yeah.
It has more than one related meaning, even within philosophy. Does it? I mean, I assume so.
It does, but you would if you just started using the term atheism, most people would adopt it as the position gods do not exist. So you would argue that you're using the term in this way at the beginning of the paper.
So it's not normative.
Exactly. No.
Okay. Fine, makes sense to me. Thus, weak atheism as a lack of belief, quote, is certainly a legitimate definition in the sense that it reports how a significant number of people use the term, argumenta populum. Again, there is more than one correct definition of atheism, just like there is more than one correct definition of theory or faith.
Yep.
I don't think we disagree with anything Stanford just said.
Yeah, I think we all understand that atheism is polysemous. All definitions are technically valid. However, the one that uses propositional logic to provide an epistemological answer to the proposition God exists is definitely the more rational and logical use of the term, and that is why it is considered the normative one within philosophy. So he's trying to be prescriptive with his definition and make other people use it, even though he keeps citing things that show that it's not the only definition. We're just explaining why we use the definitions that we use ourselves and why we prefer them. And personally, I prefer to use a more logical definition. I'm not saying that using his is completely illogical. It definitely has utility, because there are a number of people who do use it that way. But that's why, especially on the internet, you have to work out how someone is using the term. And you know, well, what do you mean by atheist in this sense? And they go, well, I only lack belief in God. Okay, that's fine. That's how you're using it. We'll move from there. I do this. But then all of a sudden, the number of times I've gone, well, I hold the belief gods do not exist. They go, oh, you're an anti-theist. I'm like, no.
Right.
No, it's an anti-theist is someone who believes that everyone should not believe in gods, not just holds the belief gods do not exist. Or they go, you're a Gnostic atheist. No, I've made no knowledge claim whatsoever. Stop telling me what I am. I'm just an atheist in the normative philosophical sense of the word. I hold the belief gods do not exist. There is no knowledge claim there. There's no absolute certainty. There is no epistemic certainty. I mean, stop it.
There was something that he was saying earlier about like people. This is happening to the we and us divided and things like that. When, as you described, you said earlier that he doesn't identify as this term. He doesn't use this for himself.
Not anymore. He in the conversation that we had, he used to be a lack of belief in God's atheist, and over time he spent time looking into gods and things like that, and now he believes gods do not exist, but he still thinks atheism includes anyone that lacks belief. So, you know, the agnostic position and all the other ontological positions that are not theist are all atheist in his world, and that's how he uses the term. And I think that's fine for him to use that term for himself, but he and even explain why he uses that term. He just shouldn't force other people to use it that way if they don't want to.
Why would somebody not want to be associated with some of the behaviors by the ACA?
Yeah.
I do seem to recall at some point there was some kind of issue that had to do with trans activism.
I seem to remember something like that. Yeah, I don't really pay that much attention to the atheist community. I'm sorry.
Why might they not want to identify as part of that clique? I don't know. All right, moving on. They said, somebody actually did make a really good point. Noel Plum talked about this in one of his videos, and he made a really good point about when it comes to census and why you wouldn't want to use that definition, because now I'm sorry, do I now have to include every table, rock, and lamp in my census?
Yep.
Talk about completely screwing up my numbers.
Well, I want to know why Aron isn't going around smashing up rocks in order to create more atheists.
Yeah, because pebbles are atheists too, obviously. So yeah.
Or split your table in half. You've now got twice as many atheists.
Oh. That said, I have to point out two things the SEP got wrong. Damn it, the thing we just agree with. Shit! One is where it supposes that, quote, if atheism is defined in terms of theism, and theism is the proposition that gods exist, and not the psychological condition of believing that there is a god, then it follows that atheism is not the absence of the psychological condition of believing in God. Sure.
That makes sense to me, yeah.
However, the original is still consistent, common, standard definitions by every one of the self-identifying atheist organizations, is that theism is the psychological condition of believing that one or more gods exists.
Yeah, I mean, sorry,
self-identifying atheist, or every one of the the ones that you listed, but I'm fine to let that go.
Well, the thing is theism isn't actually just sort of defined as the psychological condition, because theism is the argument for God's existence.
Yeah.
Which would be different. That would be a psychology psychology, a discussion about psychology, not necessarily a discussion about philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, theism, as I said earlier, I think it's the concept. So yes, it is commonly described as the belief God exists, or at least one God exists, but it doesn't hold that belief itself. It's talking about what people believe. So what we take is the propositional content from that, and that is God exists, and that's why the A is understood as negation. So God does not exist. So you've got your two propositions there, and the atheist and the theist believe one and disbelieve the other, and vice versa. I mean, this is all going back to his lack of understanding of propositional logic and contents of the words.
Godless Scummer for 5 says, so the recent riots in the U.S. were actually antagonistic philosophers trying to incite mobs against incorrect definitions of atheism? And Ashley Lee for $4.99 sent us a mic drop there.
Is the pair an atheist too?
I mean, it must.
Yeah. I mean, one more thing about the him saying that it's about belief. If you think of Aquinas' 5 ways, they're not an argument for believing, they're an argument for God itself.
Right.
Oh.
Did we get a little... But okay, there we go. We're good. We got a little hiccup. This is giving my brain a hiccup. We got a half an hour left. Do you guys want to power through longer? Because my scrolly bar is showing way higher up than I know where we're going. Let me highlight this and just start scrolling how long we got.
Well, there's one up there that I just want to mention. If you go back up.
Oh, I will. Sorry, give me 1 second. I will. I just want to see how... We got some ways to go, so do we want to do maybe a part 2?
Oh, yeah, that'd be well fun.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. We can cover that off next week.
This is why I highlighted it, by the way, so I'd be able to find where I was. This is what I scrolled down. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, where's that bit?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're coming back to him not understanding that the A can and is understood as negation, so not.
Right.
And the propositional content of theism is God exists, and the propositional content of atheism is God does not exist. So you've got one believing one and one rejecting the other. But of course, there's those that suspend judgment in regards to both propositions, and they believe neither is true or false. They lack belief both ways, and that is the psychological state of being agnostic. Now, if an agnostic or someone who does fit that parameter, again, wants to be known as an atheist, that's fine. Feel free. But within the realm of philosophy, normatively, you would be in a state of being agnostic.
Did you find your spot?
What's happened?
Yep.
Are you back?
There's a bit here where he mentions about the metaphysical question.
Oh, okay, let's get to that then. All right. So we were at, however, the original is still theism is psychological. The other error is where the SEP says that the philosophical redefinition, he's back on that redefinition thing that he didn't demonstrate before and has been shown wrong to do before. My last stream, somebody that goes by Faithless Pheasant on Twitter straight up showed him that what he wrote in his blog is completely incorrect, and he wrote this blog after that, and his response to being corrected about the historical context, he said, that's cool, I didn't know that, and then proceeds to still get it wrong. Kent Hovind, thanks. Quote, has the added virtue of making atheism a direct answer to one of the most important metaphysical questions in philosophy of religion, namely, is there a God? There are only two possible direct answers to this. Yes, which is theism, and no, which is atheism, end quote. This is wrong. No! First of all,
it's definitely not wrong.
Let's see why he thinks it's wrong. First of all, A detriment is a determinant is not a virtue. Second, and more importantly, the metaphysical question was never, is there a God? It wasn't?
It wasn't.
No, that's always been the metaphysical question.
Yeah.
How would that... Okay. That question is a topic of idle philosophical pontification of no real consequence.
I'm pretty sure there's consequences if God does exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many years of philosophy is there?
Well, you can go right back to Plato quite easily.
And how many years has it been since people believed that there may or may not proposed a god of some kind, worshipped something?
Probably going back a lot longer than that.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, assigning agency was an evolutionary survival trait, wasn't it? That rustling in the bushes, that could be a lion. Those that ran away always survived. Those that stayed might have got eaten. So it became a survival trait to assume agency even when it wasn't there.
How many virgins got thrown into volcanoes for this shit?
They were never virgins.
They didn't matter anyway.
No, it was only women, you know.
Whoa, hey, come on now. There are male virgins.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, but the thing is it also seems a bit of a strange thing for a scientist to say, well, it doesn't really matter whether this thing exists or not. We don't really care about that thing. We don't care about what actually exists in the universe. We only care whether people believe what exists in the universe.
I've taken
Yeah.
my glasses off. I'm serious now. Why are you running an organization saying that it is important to use a specific definition in relation to whether there is or is not a God when you don't think the question matters? What are you fucking doing? I hate my life. That it's of no real consequence. Aron, why were you
It's-
arguing with Kent Hovind?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, it has consequence. If God, even if it's like just a deist God, it still has consequences because it tells us something about the universe.
Even if God doesn't exist, the fact that people have different ideas about it and operate and want to make changes to other people's lifestyles, including theists and including atheists, then it is of consequence. Because if
Exactly.
you can definitively prove one way or another, not that you'd necessarily be able to do that, but if you could, that would change a lot. And just the fact that that would change a lot means it's of consequence.
Exactly.
Am I high? Or am I not high enough?
Not high enough.
Okay.
Just don't get paranoid high like Aaron Ross seems to.
Yeah, they're out to get me. They're out to get us all.
Those antagonistic philosophers trying to keep down the real working atheists, where the discussion is of no consequence. All that matters is the question of whether we believe there is a God.
See,
I
that's
mean,
not even a metaphysical question. That's a psychological question.
Right. We're all just like face palming at this point. Oh my god. Okay, chat, if you have any questions, please put them in now. And do me a favor and tweet at, or not tweet, use the at for me so I'll be able to see your questions.
Yeah, I'm not watching the live stream, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've got the side chat pulled up, so if you guys have any questions, I will interrupt what we're talking about, because I think we've kind of gotten to the point where we're gonna have to, this is a good breaking point in the article itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he stops talking about definitions themselves and starts going into history. And so I think when we make that move from definition and then kind of conflating a psychological state and a metaphysical state, and then jumping into history and the history of Christians and Muslims, which, you know, is a small amount of history compared to some of the other religions, but that's okay. It's kind of what he deals with on the forum. So let's stop screen sharing. We'll get some questions in here, and we'll see what people have to say, what people think. Do you guys have anything you want to share on screen, by the way, while we're at this?
No, it's all good.
Nah, that's fine.
I mean, I've got about 20 papers on the definition of atheism, but that would take a little while to go through.
Oh, do they all say the same thing?
Pretty much.
You want to give us a rundown of what they say?
They say that atheism should be thought in terms of the negation of theism, at least philosophically.
Okay, so how do we feel about like the logic that goes along with that? Because there's a logic to say that here's a proposition, here's the negation of the proposition, and then here's the middle ground of maybe this, maybe that, maybe you don't apply. Because we didn't even get to the rock part of this.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that using the rules of logic to, provide an epistemological answer allows us to infer accurately what people do and don't believe about a particular topic. There are a variety of positions around the proposition 3 which give like a direct answer, where we've got the theist, the atheist, and the agnostic. But there are also other positions where people think that the subject of the proposition, as in God, is so inconsistently and incoherently defined that it's not even worth considering the proposition. So, and there's some people that just don't care enough to whether it exists or not, and they're apatheists. And then we've got things like babies that especially infants, they do not have the cognitive abilities to even consider the proposition or hold beliefs yet. So, I mean, how could they be an atheist in one of these terms? They're innocent of the proposition. That's not saying that either theists or atheists are guilty. What I mean is, because they have no awareness, they actually have a total absence of not just the belief or the proposition, but even the ability to believe. And I see atheism and agnosticism and theism as considered positions. And don't get me wrong, there are some on either side that could be incredibly irrational, but with the way they do and don't believe. But most people can consider this and look for reasons why they think a certain way about things and why they have been convinced of these things. And that is sort of the burden of proof on a belief, because you're not making a truth claim saying God definitely exists, or God definitely does not exist. What you're doing is you're describing your psychological state. So the only claim that you are making in this sense is one that you're making inwardly about yourself. And therefore you do have a burden, but it's a burden to prove that you're holding a rational position.
Instead of a knowledge claim.
Yeah.
So, a couple things from the chat. What was Aron on when he wrote the last sentence, and where can I get some?
Yeah, I want to know the same.
Somebody was asking, can there be a correction on what you're if somebody was implying that non-theist equals atheist, and that rejecting P doesn't automatically mean you affirm not P. I think we agree with that. I think we just don't agree with that as being defined as atheism, because it gets confusing, and then you have no other term to use when you don't believe in P.
The category is too
not P.
Yeah, if you define everything that doesn't believe, or everything that rejects the proposition God exists, or everything that doesn't believe the proposition God exists, the category is too wide and it includes too many things. And if you make everything that's not theist atheist, then you also cancel out a bunch of other different answers, like was mentioned before.
Well, would that not fall under you would call that not theist? So,
yeah.
So, like, an agnostic and an atheist and anywhere in between, if they do not hold this specific set of beliefs, would apply as not theist, but they wouldn't be necessarily atheists. But what it seems to me is that Aron is trying to call all not theists atheists.
Yeah, he's trying to rearrange the superset not theist into the superset atheist.
And in doing so, he's trying to expand it even further into any inanimate object, which is ridiculous.
I think it's Walters.
Some problems.
Yeah. It's. I think his name's Walters, but he says by making it so broad, it makes it as if you're not really talking about anything. You don't get a specific grasp of what people actually think about the topic.
Right.
And you also include
the way I described it was, if you have a circle that has, you need to have these things to be an atheist, and a circle that had these, you need these things to be a theist, and you have a circle that says you have these things to be an agnostic. So you've got one side of the equation, you've got the other side of the equation, then you've got, I'm not quite either of these things. Mm-hmm. And then you would have another circle that holds anybody who is innocent or ignorant of the concepts. So you would end up with 4 kind of superpositions. Where do you put a rock? The rock doesn't go in any of these circles because they do not match all of the things necessary to be in any of these categories, mainly being cognizant.
Yeah, there has to be mental states there in order to actually be able to assess the proposition.
Right, so they don't even apply to the equation, let alone fall under any of these headings. I saw Aron start getting into an argument saying that birds are atheists, and then like a gotcha was like, you can't say it's not conscious. And it was like, true.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the cognitive capacity.
I mean, when you're talking about belief, even a lack of belief, you are describing mental states, aren't you? Something's attitude toward something. Even a lack of belief is its attitude towards the proposition is, well, I believe that I don't believe, it's either true or false. So to describe something that doesn't have a mental state in terms that describe mental states does not make sense.
Well, birds have mental states, but they don't
have a bird with a belief too. So if you some birds are very, very intelligent. Most corveus, most ravens or crows are smart enough to, if you give them a treat when they bring you something, they will believe that if they bring you something, they'll get a treat. Most things apply to dogs and some cats also. And if you give them they tell them to sit, they're going to get a treat. And so if they believe that, they do have a belief that, and sometimes they don't, and they get upset about it.
Yeah, our dog does.
But it's not the same kind of thing.
No. Is it actually a considered belief, or is it a learned habit?
It's still a belief because they hold a certain particular attitude towards something that might happen. They hold a particular psychological state.
But it's not conceptualized as in they've never gotten a treat before and now they think that if they do it they're going to get a treat.
Exactly. They don't have the cognitive capacity to reason through an argument.
Or invent it necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
They might do one day though.
They might. So, that changes some things. I don't think it changes anything. If you were to say take a dog or an octopus or some other relatively intelligent animal of some kind, living bee, creature, whatever, and it gets to the point of being able to start defining its own gods and start coming up with its own religion, then that thing would be added to now being capable of the things that are in the categories, and so then it would apply. So if a bird ever became intelligent enough to have that cognitive ability, then that bird would be added in, but it wouldn't change any of the definitionals, any of the superpositions.
No, it wouldn't. They need the ability to affirm or deny or suspend judgment. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, we got a couple more things from the chat. Mike said, here's the thing. The ability to prove or back up beliefs is really low on many people's lists with regards to why they believe it. Example, their belief is of higher importance than why they believe. I would agree with that.
Oh, yeah, I would agree.
I think that's
Most
why you
people
end up
have
with...
learned beliefs.
Right. That's where you get the argument about indoctrination and whether or not that's an appropriate term to use sometimes. Like, you get semantic arguments there to say, are they really indoctrinating or are they innocently more teaching what they believe to their children?
Exactly. Indoctrination to me kind of infers some kind of hidden agenda.
Or malice.
Yeah.
But you learn everything from your parents, don't you? So if your parents believe a certain thing or don't believe a certain thing, for a time, you are just going to believe that. And your reasoning is going to be, well, because my parents think it's true, so it must be.
Santa is a really good example of that.
Yeah, exactly. And you could say a child is rational. Oops, sorry. Yeah,
I was just saying, political positions or anything like that, or even things like racist beliefs and things like that. It's learned from seeing their parents. They don't necessarily have the ability to process and consider why this thing is right or wrong, or why they believe that this certain race is bad. They just do because that's what their parents think, and their parents might not have even said anything direct. They've just seen the way their parents behave.
Right.
Yeah, and if you look into the rationality debate, they'll actually discuss stuff like this, where it is rational to just believe things as a child that you're taught.
Right.
Even if that thing is irrational to somebody else.
Yeah, from a conceptual standpoint.
Yeah.
People are only as rational as they can be. So, as you say, Dave,
right.
Children don't have the ability to reason the same way that someone with a more developed mind would.
Yeah. Smitty said, what's the term for someone who believes both in the existence and non-existence of God through compartmentalization?
Irrational.
Someone suffering cognitive dissonance.
I think both are appropriate answers. Sorry, I gotta scroll down. I have to catch up on chat because I had to pause it so I could get everybody's what they were saying in.
I'm sorry, we do gab a lot.
No, it's good. It's fantastic. It's nice to have these conversations with people who don't hold don't carry a stigma with having the conversation in some cases.
Oh no, I love this kind of conversation.
Well, it ends up there's a lot of fun things to talk about. Is Puck an atheist? Is my dog an atheist? I don't know, I've never asked him. Indoctrination is the most appropriate term for of all time for religious upbringing. Would you say that about liking peanut butter, though?
Yeah, I don't feel that I was indoctrinated. I was brought up with religious beliefs. My mum went through the kids' version of the Bible stories, teaching the moral lessons, and then I went to a Christian school. I said the Lord's Prayer every day, but there was no, you have to believe this. There was no real agenda to it. I think the reason, my mum doesn't seem to be religious at all anymore. My aunt is very religious, but I think because the religious schools in the UK tend to be better and better funded, that's why my mum wanted me to go to this school. So she never really put much of her own opinion in it, but she taught me the stories because she didn't want me to be standing up in the middle of assembly going, I'm not going to do this, and cause lots of trouble. So I don't know. I don't feel I was indoctrinated, even though you could say I had quite a religious upbringing. I said the Lord's Prayer and sang hymns 5 days of the week. I even went to Sunday school at one point. So
I've always been an atheist, so I have no experience.
There's something
Always,
to be
Dave?
said for a lot of people drink milk, and it's something that you have as a baby. Then as you get older, you get milk with your cereal, you get milk with whatever, and there are people who are lactose intolerant. And then, however, as you develop, you start to just get that. Human beings aren't really meant to continue drinking milk for the rest of their lives. And so your body essentially gets used to it because you never stop. And so is drinking milk a thing of indoctrination because you're not really biologically, it's not really meant for you? Are you being indoctrinated into drinking milk? Is this big milk industry? What's happening?
Yeah, you're basically just picking stuff up from your environment as you're getting older.
Right,
Are we being
some
cannibals
things
because
like,
it's milk and atheist?
oh shit!
I mean, don't get me wrong, there will be parents that indoctrinate their kids specifically to have certain ideas, but that I wouldn't say that all religious belief is indoctrination.
No, I'd say indoctrination almost carries some sort of almost bullying into it. You have to believe this, otherwise you go to hell. You're going to be a sinner, and proper like ramming it in there and
You're going to go to
enforcing it
hell,
on
and all
there.
your friends are going to go to hell. If their families don't believe, they're all going to go to hell. Like that does exist, I think, in a lot, but I don't think it's as aggressive everywhere as it might be in some locations versus others. So it might be better to use the term indoctrination a little bit more sparingly, like the same way you'd use the word cult. So
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
lot of religions very much fall under the, like, you can check off a lot of the cult list. However, not all of them are actually it would be reasonable to call them a cult. So like, I'm not gonna call the ACA a cult, but they do check off some of those things. Most groups of people that have similar ideas about some things could be considered a cult. So if I go to university and I join the drama club, am I a fucking cult because I think drama's fun and we all think drama's fun? No. You're being a little bit hyperbolic, and it's okay to be hyperbolic, but you know, it's not... I've been calling them the atheist clique of America because they're like...
I quite like that.
Cult was too far, and so I was trying to come up with one because I'm like, cult is too far. I don't want to be rude and call them something else that is offensive in America. And so and so I was like, clique works. I like clique. You can't sit with us at the lunch table because you guys don't, because you atheists over there don't want to be called atheists. Even though we're gonna call you atheist, you don't get to sit with us atheists. We're the real atheists.
It has that kind of
Good,
feel
I didn't
to
want
it.
to sit at your table anyway. Oh, this was good. We've got, if we want, we have like 10 minutes left.
I'm good.
All right. So we've got Dapper says, I think we should be careful about saying teaching your kids something is, and that they think it's incorrect to count as indoctrination. I think we agree with that.
Yeah.
If you're just teaching your kid something, you're not necessarily, like, do you indoctrinate your kid into the alphabet?
Yeah, if you honestly believe what you believe, you're gonna pass it on, aren't you?
Yeah.
Any organization that persists in going is going to have a few cult-like tendencies, because those are tendencies that keep organizations together. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
I think Winds of Winter is a main challenge for him, and he realizes that, and then a dream of spring is pretty likely. They're talking... God damn it. God damn it, you guys. I think at the end of the day, none of us have any, like, hatred or disgust towards what Aron is proposing and what Aron is saying and how he's going about it. I think those are pretty strong emotions for what's been described here.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I mean, I've got a respect for a lot of the stuff that he does and his understanding of science. I just think his philosophical understanding, especially epistemology, is lacking.
Yeah, he knows way more science than I do, you know what I mean? There's got a lot of respect for that, and for going out in the community and combating sort of problematic people in creation at schools and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to philosophical stuff, he could just do with reading a bit more.
Yeah, and stop being so combative himself to anyone that holds a different opinion to him.
Oh, you mean he's antagonistic? He's an antagonistic philosopher?
Yeah, he seems that way. He's an
He's pretty
antagonistic
antagonistic about
non-philosopher.
philosophy.
Yeah, he is, yeah. I wouldn't say he was a philosopher.
Fair. An intrigued feline says hi.
Hello.
Hey!
God's auditor. Oh, and she also says, well, teaching your kids the imperial system is definitely indoctrination. I think we can all agree with that. God's auditor says, you indoctrinate your kids into the order of the alphabet. There is no solid rule about the order, there's just convention. So I have actually had that conversation before where I have every intention of teaching my child the alphabet song backwards. So when they
Nice.
go to school and have no other reason to know it's any other way, they're just gonna do it backwards and everybody else is gonna be like, that's wrong! I'm just gonna fuck with them a little bit. I'm an asshole! Your first lesson, don't trust anyone. You're welcome. Smitty said that he had another response to Dapper about indoctrination that was actually a little bit more lucid. Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's not indoctrination. I didn't do it.
I didn't break it.
That wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about.
It probably was me.
I had a can of ginger ale down by the side of my desk and I kicked it. Smitty said, yeah, that's not indoctrination. What's indoctrination is standard religious upbringing, poisoning the well against any criticism, not admitting your ignorance and claiming knowledge when you know you don't have it. I think there's something to be said for that. Like, if you've got just telling a child what you believe and bringing your child to Sunday school because it's basically daycare while you go to church, they're going to get that information at a very young age, and that's kind of unavoidable unless you're going to somehow convince churches to be secular in Sunday school. I don't know how, but most Sunday school is pretty mundane overall. Most of it is like, we're just telling you stories from the Bible, yay! And you're not really supposed to think about it that much as a kid. Like, yeah, all the kittens drown, and all the babies drown, and everything drowned and died, and God killed it all because fuck those people. That's not really how it's presented, and you're not really supposed to be thinking about that at that age. And if you are, they should probably be honest about it and be like, yeah, it's kind of fucking awful. The Bible should not be used as a children's school book, I think is what we're getting at. Like, it's not for kids.
No, I suppose there are a couple of stories in there that do teach morals, but I think things like Aesop's Fables are probably a better way to go on that one, aren't they?
Much better.
Yeah, you'd be better off having Sunday school that, like, just take other stories that exist and make them more maybe God-ish related, rather than using, like, Pharaoh killed everybody, and then God killed everybody, and everyone died. Yay!
If you want to go that route, go Grimm's fairy tales, so they learn a lesson and get slightly scarred.
Right? See, I'm all about I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching kids about things that might be uncomfortable or maybe scare them a little bit. You don't want to scar them for life, but you also don't want them to be so sheltered that they can't be afraid of anything. It's okay to be afraid of things, and it's okay to teach that in a safe environment. But if you're going to present stories like God sending a bear to maul some teenagers as if that's a real thing that's going to happen, yeah, I think
that's
you're running...
a bit different.
Yeah, you're running into problems, but is it indoctrination?
No.
Maybe situationally, but...
Yeah,
Not
I think
purposely.
Context does matter as well, doesn't it?
There's also a lot
as
of
with
parents
everything.
that don't know what's going on in Sunday school. They just trust their church. Which might be an error.
For me, it was generally colouring in pictures of various Bible stories and hearing various Bible stories and then singing a hymn and going home. That's all it was at mine. But I think religion is, at least in the UK, generally not taken quite as seriously as it is in America. I remember when I actually lived in Michigan, and my girlfriend at the time told her dad that she did not want to get confirmed, and he took out his belt and whipped her till she agreed to do it. I mean, there's a big difference there between my experience, which was, oh, you don't want to go to Sunday school anymore. You don't believe anymore. Oh, okay. Doesn't matter. Whatever.
But you're old enough that I don't have to bring you with me anyway. Great. There's God's Auditor said, when you go into the military and you learn something academic, they refer to it as indoctrination. So it doesn't have to be something not true. It just has to be a teaching of doctrine. Sure. I think I tend to find that indoctrination tends to have a little bit more of a implication of like a forceful, you have to believe this. And that's not the case with every religion, and it's not even the case with every sect of any particular religion, or even like I could go to one church over there that's gonna say I need to be stoned to death, and I can go to this church over here and be like, nah, it's fine, it's okay, whatever, just be a nice guy, it's fine. Yeah. So it depends. It really does depend. I think we can start wrapping. Yep. Good things there aren't any bears in this area. God beams in bears from 1,000 miles away. Damn it! So if you guys want to, if you want to tell the audience who you are again, where they can find you, links will be in the description as soon as I finish adding them, because adding them ahead of time is a giant pain in the ass, because YouTube Studio kind of blows. And now I'm demonetized. I was doing so well, but then I said YouTube sucked. So well. Fuck. Alright. Tell us who you are again, where to find you, and last thoughts.
I'll let Joe go first, as I went first last time.
Okay, I'm Joe, or Davidian, on Answers in Reason. You can find us at answers-in-reason.com. I'm a blogger, podcaster, webmaster for that. My job is an SQL and VBA programmer. I enjoy all this sorts of stuff. I'm a bit of a philosophy enthusiast, and I've learned a lot over, especially the last year, from Dave and things that he's given me to look at, and a variety of different resources and books that I've bought and have been reading through. I love these sorts of conversations. I feel that we shouldn't be prescriptive with our uses on any sort of terminology, but we also have to understand that there are contextually correct uses of words, and that sometimes the normative use is probably a better use of a word, because it can be more specific to, again, the context.
And I'm Dave, also of Answers in Reason, and I study philosophy, and I'm just finishing off a master's degree in said thing. And I do all the things that Joe does except programming. I'm lazy and I sit around and study.
I'm gonna have to need your help. I was in a call a couple of days ago, or a week or so ago. I don't know what time is, and nobody knows what time is.
Yeah, I can relate.
Discussion. If you ever lose track of time and you don't know what day it is or where you are, don't feel bad, because nobody even knows what time is. It's okay. I was in this discussion with a bunch of people who have degrees of some kind in various fields of science, and they were asking me questions about philosophy, and I was like, oh god, in 20 years from now, people are going to be coming to me when Steve's not around, and I'm going to be like, oh shit, I see where my life is going, and I don't know if I'm happy with it.
I'm going to have a master's from next month, and I feel like that whenever people ask me philosophy questions.
Yeah, well, on the plus side, at least Aron wasn't asking us any questions. He was just telling us what it should be. Or what it is.
I can't be a philosopher yet because I haven't learned to be antagonistic.
Damn it! All right, I've been.
No. If you ever have any questions, feel free to message.
Yes, we're gonna need to get T-shirts designed called like just antagonistic philosophers. We get like a couple of us in a group together, and we'll just make an entire channel called Antagonistic Philosophers. We'll start calling into the ACA just to be like, so, we're here to antagonize you about philosophy.
We should all organize a worldwide protest, like 3 of us standing outside our local unis in antagonistic T-shirts with down with Laxism placards.
Oh, God. The levels of ridiculous. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that both of you were able to come on. Look out for part 2, because we're going to have to start scheduling that now, because we only got like a portion through that. We didn't even get to the rocks. And like, you know that it's only going to get worse from here.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I hope everybody has a good day. I am looking forward to hopefully tomorrow or soon taking a look at some old comments on an old video that may or may not have been about cooking that I think is going to be a little bit fun to talk about. So I think I'm just going to do it as like a Discord call without videos, just so as many people who want to come and get a kick out of this can come on. So hopefully I'll see you guys soon, and have a good day, everybody.
You too. Good night, Chash, and thanks again.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da.